Katie Ray Jones is the CEO of the National Domestic Violence Hotline and joins me from her home in Austin, Texas. Katie, thank you so much for joining us. So when this pandemic first hit, you actually saw a drop in calls, and that was an alarming sign for you. Explain that.
Good morning. Thank you, Tamron, for having us on. Absolutely. We were incredibly concerned at the beginning of the pandemic because we knew that survivors were going to be essentially trapped in their homes with abusive partners, and that our worry was that they would have the inability to seek out help because they were in such close proximity to the person who is most likely watching their behaviors, watching who they're talking to, what they're looking at on the internet, and knew that that would be an incredibly difficult time for them to be able to connect for help.
You know, I saw a report that abusers are using COVID-19 to terrorize. The one example I saw that I just couldn't believe, an individual was threatening to cough on his wife and children, saying, "I'll expose you to the virus," as a way to torture them in the home. What else are you hearing?
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's like not even one unique story that we've been hearing. That has been a common theme that we've been hearing from victims across the country, that their partner is threatening to expose them to the virus or not adhering to shelter-in-place orders, coming home and indicating that they may have COVID, and if you get sick, I'm going to kick you out of the home, or I won't pay for your medical treatment. You'll have nowhere to go. So that's something we've definitely been hearing. And then we heard stories where survivors were being forced to overly wash their hands to the point where their hands were cracked and bleeding. And I get goosebumps even right now thinking about this, because it is really, when we think sheltering in place is going to keep us safer, for victims of domestic violence, that is not their sanctuary by any means.
Absolutely. And also, we often believe calling police, that's the solution, that's the safest option. But you say that's not the case.
Yeah, calling the police can certainly be a complicating factor for victims of domestic violence. Pre-COVID, we would hear a lot of stories from survivors who would talk about, my husband or my partner has indicated if I call the police, they're going to kill me, kill our children, kill themselves. So we know that the most dangerous time for a victim of domestic violence is when they're trying to leave the relationship. Calling the police is a strong signal to the abusive partner that someone's planning on leaving. Now, in COVID, this becomes especially complicated because we know across the country, and this is no gripe at the police department, we know they're working hard to keep populations safe, but they're not detaining for misdemeanors, which we know most instances of domestic violence are misdemeanors.
So what does someone do? I mean, I read this article that, for example, in France, there's this code, they call it the Mask 19 code, that if someone is the victim of abuse, when they go into a pharmacy, they can simply say Mask 19, and that would alert the pharmacist. And in France, they've told pharmacists to be aware of this, listen for it. What are the options here, especially as this pandemic, you have, half of the country reopened, but major cities are not, and people are still stuck in the homes with these abusers?
Such initiatives like we've seen in France can certainly be effective here in America. And we saw it with the Black Dot campaign, where victims would put a black dot on their hands, and that would be an indicator to physicians that they were in an abusive relationship. Those typically work for a short time before abusive partners begin to learn about those strategies and then be on the watch for them. So right now, what we're really encouraging victims to do is, if they can find opportunities to either contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline, or what we're really imploring is friends and families, neighbors, to really be in a place where they can reach out and connect with someone who they think might be in an abusive relationship and find out the best way to help them. And most importantly, remind them that they are strong and courageous, and that you are there to support them throughout anything that they may be experiencing.